I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who installs hidden cameras in her own home. But then again, I never thought I'd find my childhood best friend wearing my lingerie in my laundry room at midnight. Let me back up. I hadn't spoken to Mira in nearly 5 years when she resurfaced with a voicemail so broken I could barely understand her through the sobs. She said she'd finally left her fiancé, a man I'd never met but had heard plenty of horror stories about through mutual friends. She said he'd been violent, controlling, that he'd cut her off from everyone, and that she had nowhere to go. No family, no savings, just a duffel bag and a black eye she swore was healing. I sat on my couch in the suburbs of Portland, phone pressed to my ear, and felt every protective instinct I'd ever buried rise up like a tidal wave. Mira and I grew up together in a small town outside Eugene. She was a wild one, daring, magnetic, always at the center of some drama she swore wasn't her fault. We drifted after high school. I went to college, built a stable life, married a man named Derek who worked in commercial real estate. Mira bounced from city to city, relationship to relationship, always chasing something she couldn't name. But hearing her like that, small and terrified, it undid something in me. I told Derek that night that Mira needed a place to stay. He was sitting on a recliner, scrolling through his phone, and he barely looked up. He'd met her once, briefly, at our wedding 5 years ago. She'd gotten drunk, made a scene, and left early. He remembered her as a lot. I told him people change. He shrugged and said it was my call. I should have said no. Mira arrived on a Tuesday afternoon with bloodshot eyes, a cracked phone screen, and a story about how she escaped in the middle of the night while her ex was passed out. I hugged her at the door, and she clung to me like I was a life raft. Derek stood behind me in the hallway, arms crossed, polite but distant. Mira gave him a small, watery smile and asked if she could lie down. I put her in the guest room, the one with the floral curtains I'd sewn myself. The first week was quiet. She slept a lot, apologized constantly, and thanked me for every glass of water and plate of toast. I told her to take her time, that she was safe now, that this was her home for as long as she needed. By the end of the second week, Mira had unpacked, not just her things. She'd rearranged the guest room furniture, moved my spices around in the kitchen, and started leaving her shoes by the front door like she'd lived there for years. She offered to cook dinner one night, and Derek, who usually ate my meals without comment, actually said, "Wow, this is incredible. Way better than the usual stuff." It was a small thing, a throwaway compliment, but the way Mira smiled, slow, deliberate, like she just unlocked something, stayed with me. After that, the shifts became harder to ignore. Mira always seemed to be wherever Derek was. If he was in the living room watching sports, she'd wander in with a cup of tea and ask him to explain the rules. If he was working late in his home office, she'd knock with a snack and a just checking in. She started wearing my clothes without asking, my favorite hoodie, my cashmere scarf, even a pair of my jeans that she said fit her better anyway. When I confronted her about the jeans, she laughed and said, "Relax, it's just fabric. You're so tense lately." Derek told me I was being paranoid. He said she was traumatized, that she didn't know how to have normal boundaries because she'd been isolated for so long. He said I should be flattered that she felt comfortable enough to borrow my things. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to be the generous, understanding friend I'd always tried to be. But then came the comments. Mira started dropping little remarks, always with a smile, always when Derek was in earshot. Derek deserves someone who remembers how he takes his coffee. Or it must be so exhausting for him, being the only one who keeps this place running. Once, she looked at me over the rim of her wine glass and said, "You know, if I weren't so loyal to you, I might have to steal him." Just joking. Unless... Derek laughed. I didn't. One night, I came downstairs at 2 a.m. to get water and found them on the back patio. They were sitting close, shoulders touching, voices low. When I opened the sliding door, they jumped apart like teenagers caught by a parent. Mira said they were just talking about her ex. Derek said he was just being supportive. I went back to bed and stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. I started paying closer attention after that. Not in an obvious way. I didn't want to be the jealous wife or the paranoid friend. But I watched. I listened. I noticed how Myra's voice went softer when she spoke to Derek, how she brushed past him in the kitchen and let her hand linger on his arm, how Derek, who used to come home and kiss me first thing, now walked past me in the fridge and asked what Mira wanted for dinner. When I tried to talk to him about it, he got defensive. He said I was imagining things, that I was stressed from work, that maybe I should talk to someone because I was spiraling. Mira, overhearing from the hallway, came in and put her hand on my shoulder and said, "We're just worried about you. You've seemed so off lately." That was the moment I stopped trusting my own mind. I actually started wondering if they were right. Maybe I was being irrational. Maybe I was the problem. Then I found a text. Derek left his phone on the kitchen counter while he was in the shower. I'd never snooped before, never even considered it. But something in my gut wouldn't let me walk away. I picked it up, typed in his password, our anniversary, which he hadn't bothered to change, and opened his messages. There was a thread with a contact named M. No last name. The most recent message, sent an hour earlier, read, "She's going to be home late tonight. You know what that means." Mira had replied with a single emoji, a peach. I scrolled up, dozens of messages, some flirty, some explicit, some disturbingly mundane, discussing what they'd watched on TV while I was at work, complaining about my cooking, even mocking the way I laughed. One message from Derek read, "She's so clueless. It's almost sad." Mira had replied with a crying, laughing emoji. I didn't confront him. I didn't scream or cry or throw the phone at the wall. I put it back exactly where I'd found it, walked upstairs, and sat in the bathroom with the shower running so nobody would hear me breathe. That night, I ordered a set of small motion-activated cameras. They arrived 2 days later, disguised as phone chargers and alarm clocks. I installed one in the kitchen, one in the living room, and one in the hallway outside the guest room. Derek never noticed. Mira was too busy touching his arm and laughing at his jokes to look at the outlets. The footage was worse than I imagined. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched my marriage dissolve in 30-second clips. Mira coming out of the guest room at 11 a.m., wearing nothing but one of Derek's dress shirts. Derek pouring wine at noon on a Wednesday. The two of them on the couch, his hand on her thigh, her head on his shoulder, like they were the ones who'd been married for a decade. One clip showed them kissing, not a quick peck, but a slow, deliberate, familiar kiss that made my stomach turn inside out. But the worst clip, the one that still plays in my head when I can't sleep, was from the laundry room. Mira had taken off her shirt and was standing in front of the washer in a lace bra that I recognized, not because I own one like it, but because it was mine, a gift from Derek on our second anniversary. She was holding it up to the light, inspecting it, while Derek stood in the doorway watching her with an expression I hadn't seen him wear in years. I saved every clip, labeled them by date, backed them up on 3 different drives. Then I waited. I didn't confront them right away. I went to work, came home, made small talk, and watched them perform their little dance around me. Mira got bolder. She started leaving her hairbrush on my bathroom counter. She rearranged the fridge so her almond milk was on my shelf. She even started calling Derek babe when she thought I wasn't listening. Derek, for his part, became distant in a way that felt calculated. He stopped kissing me goodnight, stopped asking about my day. He'd come home, eat whatever Mira had cooked she'd taken over dinner duties without asking, and retreat to the living room where she'd already be waiting with a blanket and a movie queued up. One night, I came downstairs to find them slow dancing in the kitchen to music playing from Derek's phone. No lights on except the one above the stove, her cheek against his chest, his eyes closed. They didn't even hear me walk in. I went back upstairs, locked my bedroom door, and called a divorce attorney the next morning. The confrontation happened on a Sunday. I'd told Derek I was going to visit my sister in Seattle for the weekend. Instead, I checked into a hotel 10 minutes away and watched the cameras from my laptop. By Saturday afternoon, Mira had moved her things into the master bedroom. By Saturday night, she was sleeping in my side of the bed. Derek didn't stop her. He didn't even hesitate. I drove home Sunday morning. The house smelled like bacon and coffee. Mira was in the kitchen wearing my robe, the silk one Derek had bought me for our first anniversary, and flipping pancakes. Derek was sitting at the table, shirtless, reading the paper like he was on vacation. They both froze when I walked in. I didn't say anything at first. I walked to the kitchen counter, pulled a USB drive out of my pocket, and plugged it into the TV in the living room. Then I pressed play. The first clip was from the hallway camera. Mira leaving the guest room at 2 a.m., walking to master bedroom, and slipping inside without knocking. The second clip was from the kitchen. Derek and Mira kissing against a refrigerator while I was at work. The third clip was from the living room. Mira straddling Derek on the couch, both of them laughing, while a half-eaten bowl of popcorn sat on the coffee table. Derek went pale. Myra's face twisted through about 5 different emotions: shock, embarrassment, defiance, and then something that looked almost like relief. "You filmed us," she said. Her voice was high, incredulous, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. I told her to pack her things and get out. She didn't move. Instead, she crossed her arms and looked at Derek. "Are you to say something?" Derek opened his mouth, closed it, then looked at me. "It's not what you think." I laughed, actually laughed. Then I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshots I'd already sent to my lawyer. "It's exactly what I think. And now it's what everyone else is going to think, too." That was when Mira started crying. Big theatrical tears. She said I was ruining her life, that she'd finally found someone who made her feel safe, that Derek had pursued her, not the other way around. She said maybe if I'd been a better wife, none of this would have happened. I told her to save performance for someone who hadn't seen the footage of her climbing into my husband's bed while I was at the grocery store buying food for her. She left an hour later. Derek tried to stay, tried to apologize, tried to explain. I handed him a suitcase I'd packed the night before and told him his brother was coming to pick him up. He asked how I'd known to pack his things. I told him I'd known for 2 weeks, that every time he'd kiss me goodbye in the morning, I'd already seen what he was going to do the second I left. He cried. I didn't. The fallout was swift and satisfying. I called Derek's parents first. His mother answered with her usual warmth, and I told her everything. I sent her the clips. She didn't defend him. She just kept saying, "Oh, honey. Oh, honey." His father called me an hour later and said he was ashamed to share a last name with his own son. I called Derek's siblings next. His sister, who'd always been cold to me, actually apologized. His younger brother, who lived across the country, flew in the next weekend to help me move Derek's things into storage. He said he'd always thought Mira was off. I told him that was the understatement of the century. Then I called our mutual friends. Not all of them, just the ones I trusted. I told them the truth without embellishment. Some were horrified. Some said they'd always suspected something was wrong with Mira. A few, to my surprise, said they'd seen her try this before with other couples. Apparently, Mira had a pattern. I was just the first one who'd bothered to look. I didn't post anything publicly. I didn't need to. The truth traveled fast enough on its own. Within a week, Mira had been uninvited from 3 different group vacations. Her life coaching Instagram account lost half its followers. Someone even made a private Facebook group called Myra's Greatest Hits, where people shared stories of her manipulative behavior going back years. Derek, meanwhile, moved into a studio apartment downtown. His boss called me. We become friendly over the years, and asked if the rumors were true. I sent him one clip. Derek was put on administrative leave within 48 hours. Not fired, but close enough. In the world of commercial real estate, reputation is everything. His was in shreds. The divorce took 4 months. Derek tried to fight it first. Hired a lawyer, filed counterclaims, even tried to argue that I'd invaded his privacy with the cameras. But the judge took one look at the footage and dismissed every single one of his motions. I got the house. I got the car. I got a settlement that let me take 6 months off work to breathe. I spent that time rediscovering myself. I repainted every room in the house. Colors Mira would have hated. I threw out the robe she'd worn, the sheets she'd slept on, even the coffee mug she'd used. I started running in the mornings. I took a pottery class. I adopted a cat named Gus who hates everyone but me. And slowly, piece by piece, I stopped being the woman who'd been betrayed and started being the woman who survived it. Then, 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I got a text from an unknown number. Hey, it's Leo, Derek's brother. I know this is weird, but I'm in town for a conference, and I wondered if you want to grab coffee. No pressure. Just thought it might be nice to catch up. Leo and I had exchanged maybe a dozen messages during the divorce, mostly logistical things about picking up Derek's belongings. He'd been kind, respectful, and conspicuously absent from the family drama. He lived in Chicago now, worked as an architect, and had apparently spent the last several years deliberately keeping his distance from his brother's messes. I said yes to coffee. Then coffee turned into dinner. Then dinner turned into a walk along the riverfront. And the walk turned into him telling me that he'd always thought I was too good for Derek, that he'd known something was wrong the first time he met Mira at the wedding, that he'd spent years biting his tongue and was tired of doing it. I kissed him first, on a bench overlooking the water, with the city lights reflecting off the surface and a cool wind blowing through my hair. He kissed me back like he'd been waiting years for permission. That was 8 months ago. Leo didn't rush me. He didn't push for labels or timelines or guarantees. He called every night. He sent flowers for no reason. He showed up on my doorstep one rainy Tuesday just because he'd had a bad day, and I was the only person he wanted to see. He met Gus, who immediately hissed at him, and he said, "Fair enough, I'll earn it." And he did. We're not married. We're not even engaged. But last week, he asked me to come to Chicago for a long weekend. He showed me his favorite coffee shop, the building he was most proud of designing, and the spot by the lake where he goes when he needs to think. Then he took me back to his apartment, made me dinner, and said, "I don't know what this is yet, but I know I don't want it to stop." I told him I didn't either. As for Mira, the last I heard, she'd moved to Arizona and was trying to rebrand as a wellness influencer. Her posts are full of vague inspirational quotes about rising from the ashes and cutting out toxic people. The comments are turned off. Derek lost his job 6 months after the divorce. He's selling used cars now, according to his mother, who still calls me every few weeks to apologize. I've stopped asking her to. Some wounds take time. Hers aren't mine to heal. Me? I'm good. I'm better than good. I wake up in a house that's mine, in a bed that's never had anyone else's secrets in it, and I drink my coffee from a mug that nobody borrowed without asking. I have a cat who purrs when I cry. I have a man who calls just to hear my voice. I have a life that I built with my own 2 hands, brick by brick, out of the rubble of someone else's betrayal. And when I think about Mira and Derek now, which is less and less often, I don't feel anger or sadness or even satisfaction. I feel something closer to gratitude. Not for what they did. That will always be unforgivable. But for what it gave me. Permission to stop being the person who tolerated the intolerable. Permission to want more. Permission to finally choose myself. The cameras came down months ago. I don't need them anymore. The only thing I'm watching now is my own future. And for the first time in years, I can't wait to see what happens next.